Good day, everyone. Today I'll be introducing you to ecology. So we shall be looking at introduction to ecology. And under this, the first thing we are going to look at is the meaning of ecology. When we talk about ecology, the word is actually, derived from two Greek words, oikos meaning house and logos which means study. So literally one can say ecology means the study of house. Definitely house cannot be empty, especially when you're talking about science or biology. So, and that is why we say that ecology is the science that studies different organisms and their interactions with other organisms and their environment and its all surroundings. It could also be referred to as the branch of science that deals with the total relationships of organisms to their organic and inorganic environment. That is to say that when you talk about ecology, it is about studying organisms, where the organism lives, how it interacts with some other organisms, and those things that are inorganic or that are non-living things that are present in that particular environment. And that is why ecology is also referred to as environmental biology. Ecology, when you study ecology, one important thing to note is that the major sustainer of life is Earth. There are so many There are different types of planets, but the heart is the major sustainer of life. That is, it is the heart that sustains life. That part of the heart where living organisms are found is referred to as biosphere. And biosphere is divided into three. You have the air component of the earth, which is referred to as atmosphere. The water component of the earth is referred to as hydrosphere, while the lithosphere is the soil part of the biosphere, that is of the earth. The biosphere therefore represents a complex interrelationship between these areas, that is between soil, water, air, and the organisms that are present in them. And the chain of interactions that occur between these organisms and their environment is called ecosystem. And that is why we refer to ecosystem simply as a structural and functional unit of ecology where living organisms interact with each other and the environment. That is just a unit, the structural unit where you have organisms interacting together as well as with their environment. Ecology is divided into two: autecology and synecology. When the study deals with an individual species or an individual species and its population, that is, if the study is about just one organism, a particular species, and just one, it is autecology. And it could also be the study of a species and its environment. That is a particular species, the population of that particular species and the interactions with the environment. Then it is autecology. But when the study deals with groups of organisms interacting together and their environments, that is when there are different organisms, different species being studied, how they interact together with other organisms, their structures, number, how they interact with their environment and the like, then that is referred to as synecology. Ecology is divided into different branches or subfields. We have evolutionary, for example, we have evolutionary ecology, which deals with evolution. We have demiecology, which deals with population. We have conservation ecology. We have paleoecology. We have gynecology, we have a gynecology or gene ecology, we have taxonomic ecology, we have physiological ecology or ecophysiology. We also have habitat ecology and a host of some other examples. Interactions occur between organisms because they need each other to exist. That is, there is no organism that is an island on its own. That is, there is no organism that can exist on its own without depending on other. That is, without depending on other living things or non-living things. So invariably, we're saying that for living things to survive, they need each other to survive. That is, they need to interact with each other. To survive, an organism, to live, an organism needs food. The food an organism take in supplies or contains nutrients, and these nutrients, the nutrients in the food provide energy in the foods that have been taken, provides energy for the body. So organisms get energy for survival from the food they eat, and when they feed on each other, invariably that means that organisms get energy for survival by feeding on each other. So we want to look at the flow of this energy. One major important thing to note is that all energy that comes to the earth comes from sun. That is, sun is the ultimate source of energy. The sun warms the earth. When the sun shines, it warms the earth, and it also supplies an energy that is referred to as solar energy. This solar energy is usually being trapped by green plants. It will be trapped by green plants for them to manufacture their foods in the process called photosynthesis. Even though we have some other organisms that use chemicals to manufacture their foods by the process of chemosynthesis, but the most common ones are the energy being trapped, the solar energy being trapped by green plants. And when these green plants are when they manufacture their foods, some animals will come and feed on these plants. Those animals are referred to as herbivores. Another group of animals will feed on these animals. Those ones are bigger animals that feed on the first set of animals are referred to as carnivores. So this is a simple interaction. That is, you have energy flowing from plants to the first eater of plants, that is the herbivores. So energy will flow from the herbivores now to carnivores, and that is how you have flow of energy taking place. So energy flow is simply the flow of energy from an environment to an organism, and from organism to organism. That is, from an environment to organism. For example, from the sun is an environment to an organism. That's from an environment. Then when the plant is being eaten, it will by another organism. It is now from organism to organism. So looking at this, we're going to look at different feeding relationships that show how energy moves from one organism to the other. So the first feeding relationship we're going to look at is what we refer to as food chain. It shows a linear relationship, a linear feeding relationship between organisms. That is, you have a straight line of the relationships, feeding relationships taking place in organisms. Look at this one. Green plants will take energy from the sun, and when energy is taken from the sun, the energy it will move from grass to grasshopper. When grasshopper feed on it, I feed on grass, and energy will move from grasshopper to bird. When bird feeds on grasshopper, and then the energy will move from bird to folks when folks feed on bird. So energy moves on and on like that. The green plants, because they are the ones that manufacture their foods on their own, and they refer to as the producer. The primary consumers are the ones that feed directly on plants. The secondary consumers are those ones that feed on what feeds on plants, and you also have the tertiary consumers. The next one we're going to look at, this is also another example of a food chain. If you look at this space, you will see that it's not joining to the other one. So grass is being fed upon by grasshopper, so energy moves from grass to grasshopper, from grasshopper to frog, and from frog to snake, from snake to hawk. That's another one. So the next one we're going to look at, that is the next feeding relationship we shall look at here, is food web. Food web shows a web of different feeding relationships. That is, you have more than one food chains here. You have more than one food chain. Look at here, you have grass being fed upon by grasshopper, and grasshopper being fed upon by frog, and frog being fed upon by hawk or eagle. Now look at this side again, the trees being fed upon by deer, and deer being fed upon by snake, and snake being fed upon by eagle. So when you have different feeding relationships that are linked together, that is referred to as food web. Now one thing that is of note here is that Each feeding relationship, if each feeding level is referred to as trophic level. That is, this level now, this level, the grasshopper feeding on grass, for example, like I told you the other time, they are the primary consumer, so that's a trophic level. The frog, a secondary consumer, that is another trophic level. So we say that the trophic level, this one is showing another food web. You can see grass here being fed upon by goats, goats being fed upon by fox, and fox being fed upon by lion. Now look at this place, rat feeding on, that is the grass or plants being fed upon by rat, rats being fed upon by hoe, and hoe being fed upon by hawk. That's another food web. So each of these ones, they are referred to as, trophic level. This is a trophic level because it is a primary consumer feeding directly on the plant. This is another trophic level, secondary consumer feeding on goats that feeds on plant. Now, just like I said the other time, trophic level is each step in a feeding relationship. Now, another feeding relationship that we are going to look at is referred to as ecological pyramids. Ecological pyramids are graphical representations of trophic levels in an ecological system. This pyramid could be pyramids of numbers or pyramid of biomass. When the total number of when the pyramid is showing the total number of individual organisms at each trophic level, then it is referred to as pyramid of numbers. But when the representation, that is when the organisms are being represented showing the mass present per unit area at different trophic level, then that is referred to as pyramid of biomass. Let's look at these two diagrams. The one on the left is showing grasses are about 10,000 grasses being fed upon by 1,000 grasshopper, and 1,000 grasshopper is being fed upon by 100 frogs, and 100 frogs being fed upon by 5 snakes, and 5 snakes being fed upon by 1 hawk. This is showing the trophic level, different trophic level. At different trophic level is showing the number of organisms that you have there. But the second diagram on your right is showing grass. You have below it, you have 26,550.5 joules. That is the energy of the grasses that you have at the base that are being fed upon by 2,655.5 joules of grasses and 250.55 joules of a frog feeding on grasshopper, and you have snakes, 26.55 joules of snakes feeding on frogs, feeding on 250.5 joules. So while this side is representing energy, the other side, the one on the left, is showing the numbers of the organisms at each trophic level. So the one showing the number of organisms at each trophic level is referred to as pyramid of numbers, while the one that is showing the energy of organisms at each trophic level is referred to as pyramid of biomass. One thing that you should know here is that at each level you have grasses, and these grasses are producers. They are primary producers. That is what this PP means. Then you have primary consumers for PC, SC means secondary consumers, and you have tertiary consumers for TC. So those are the two different pyramid of pyramid showing feeding relationships.